It's time for Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Realty Executives Preferred Advisors.
Good Sunday morning to you. This is Karey Brown, broker, owner of Realty Executives Preferred Advisors, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. Today I have Barry Feaker with the Rescue Mission here with me today. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Karey.
So it sounds like we have a ton of things to talk about. I'd really like to understand, and I think the community should understand exactly what Topeka Rescue Mission does for people.
Yeah, that's a good question with a big, long answer. It's unfolded over about 64 years in the community. And so started out with basically finding some folks that needed something to eat and then eventually shelter. And then throughout the years, it's been probably most known for sheltering the homeless. So over 2,000 different people, men, women, and children, find a place to have refuge each night throughout the year, over 2,000. Last year, we served almost 600,000 meals to hungry citizens in the community. But Topeka Rescue Mission has become quite a bit more than just homeless shelter services. There's education programs, a 13-week program called CARE for Career Readiness and Education, trying to help people who are homeless get back on their feet. Then there's a year program called Servants in Training. And then there is a long-term program, a 2-year program now for some of our residents of the Rescue Mission called the Center for Biblical Leadership Development, which actually is a seminary-level course that is recognized by World Impact for helping develop people who will do the service that we do around the world in urban settings. And so there's education programs like that, a lot of networking with different organizations. We have a Street Reach program that goes out into different places in the community to look for the unsheltered homeless. And we network with Vallejo Mental Health Services, with our hospitals, a lot with law enforcement, recovery programs to try to help people right where they are. Topeka is no different than any other community our size. There are homeless here, always have been, unfortunately, always will be. The poverty rate in the country amongst the poorest of the poor is growing, has been here in Topeka as well. Last I looked, in Topeka Public School District, the 501 school district, 80% of the children are eligible for free or reduced lunches. What that means is their parents' economic status is struggling to the degree that those kids need some type of support to be able to just eat their meals at school, whether it's breakfast or lunch. That's an indicator. There's about 14,000 kids in that population of Topeka Public Schools. That's just the city proper, and that is a reflection of where we are. You run the clock back about 5 years ago, I think it was about 72%. So we're going the wrong direction in regards to that. And so whether it's in the streets or feeding people meals or us just trying to help people get back on their feet, there's a number of different ways that we approach that. Homelessness and poverty have labels, homelessness and poverty, but they represent something much deeper than just those labels. You know, why are people homeless? Why are they poor? What are those factors that are coming into place? When we reach out to someone in the streets, why are they out there? Why aren't they in the shelter? Why aren't they in a home? Why aren't they wherever they could be other than the streets? And there's many factors, but oftentimes what we call a long-term chronic homeless person outdoors is there because of mental illness or substance abuse. And what we found nationally, it takes about 70 contacts with that person on an average before they trust you enough to be able to come in for services. So you got to go back and over and over and over again to build that relationship. And so when we do that, it may take a year or longer to be able to develop that bonding relationship with someone before they'll say, okay, I think I'm ready to get some help. And so, PTSD, a number of our veterans will experience that. On the other spectrum is that the fastest growing rate of homeless 15 years ago was children 14 years and younger. It's still that way. 15 years later, fastest growing rate of homeless in America, children 15 years and younger. Second fastest growing rate are women. The men's population continues to increase, but it's not at the rate of women and kids. So back in 1998, we decided to build a shelter for families called the Hope Center. It's now 16 years old, and we finally moved in the year 2000. So 2016 makes it 16 years, and it has been predominantly full all of these years. And so between the men's shelter at 600 North Kansas, across the street, the Hope Center for Women and Families, the dining room that we have in the main shelter, we have the long-term programs, the 1 and 2 year program. We have found ourselves in a situation over the years where we just don't have enough room here. And so our desire is never to turn anybody away. If they're ready to come in off the streets or they're a family who's run on hard times, we want to bring them in. And so we've been opening up places in our shelters that aren't designed for shelter. And so we've worked with the city on that around variances, which they call temporary variances. They'll last about a year, sometimes 18 months. But the idea there is not to do that on a permanent basis. So a number of years ago, we were looking at building another shelter. And so last night we had about 270 people at the mission. Sometimes that'll reach close to 325 or 350. If we built the other shelter to try to take care of the problem, we're pretty certain it would be like the Hope Center. We build it, we'll fill it up. And if we built the other shelter for between $7 and $10 million, that's expensive. And to be noted, all of what Topeka Rescue Mission does is on donations. There's no government funds here. So that's a lot of donor dollars to raise to build a shelter. We would have had about 500 people sheltered each night if we built the shelter to take care of the population problem. What we asked ourselves, the question was, what are we going to do after we fill that up? Are we going to build another one? And then another one, and another one. What's wrong with this picture, nationally as well as locally, and what could we do to really address this? So we came up with some different platforms to try to address before we built the shelter. One, we were going to try to develop some more proactive mentoring programs to try to engage with individuals who would help people once they left the shelter, or maybe even before they hit the shelter. What we found over the years is that we get some people pretty broken when they come to us. I mean, they're hopeless, and sometimes that leads to addiction issues, sometimes just despondency and giving up on life because, you lose everything. You're in a homeless shelter. It's not probably your choice. It's not what you thought you would wake up and do. And so trying to help people to get not just back on their feet, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually on their feet. They go out into this big bad world out here, and they come back. We found out that a lot of times for the women, it was about shelter issues, but more than that is they didn't feel safe. And so they kept coming back with their kids saying, where I'm living, I'm afraid to sleep. I don't feel like my children are safe, so the mission is safer. So again, we could build a big city. Maybe 20 years from now we'll have 1,000 people a night. And then we say, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to go where these places are that are not so safe. So let's create a mentoring program to help people to have somebody that's going to walk with them through life, that will help them be there for them, create some mentoring teams. And what I mean by that is the mentor is more like the coach, and the team is people who have been in the same game of challenge and struggle in their life. And that really works well because, Sally's car breaks down on her way to work. So she doesn't just call the mentor and say, oh, come fix my car. She calls the team. And then maybe John or Susie or whoever's got an ability to get Sally to work that day. The coach just helps kind of navigate that and work with that. And it seems to be working really well. And so we decided to address that. The other thing that we decided to address before we build shelter is let's find out where the hot spots are. And when I say the hot spots, where is homelessness really originating from in our community? So a number of years ago, we began to study what's called neighborhood health maps. The city of Topeka puts those out. It looks at the issues of crime and safety, poverty, boarded up homes, property values, those kind of things. We found out that there were some common threads in some particular areas of our community. One of the most challenged neighborhoods was what's called Highland Crest West, or High Crest. And a lot of people hadn't heard of High Crest before we began to look at that, other than the people who live there. I was in a meeting one time with some community leaders, and I had a chance to, about 80 of them, and I had a chance to ask the question, how many of you know where High Crest is? And out of 80, about 20 raised their hand. Well, I was the one who was emceeing the meeting, and I had a chance to decide where we meet. So I said, well, guess what? We're going to start meeting in High Crest. Since we don't know where it is, we're going to find out where it is, and the next year we're going to have our meetings there. So we did, and what was birthed out of that was maybe the Topeka Rescue Mission could have a presence in High Crest, not to, create another shelter. We don't want to, that's what we're trying to avoid. But what can we do to strengthen the neighborhood? What can we do to mix in with the residents there of that population of about 5,000 people? 92% of the kids that live in are in extreme poverty, high crime rates. And one of the things we found out at the time when we were looking at High Crest is it was the highest percentage of infant mortality death rates in the whole state of Kansas. More babies were dying in High Crest than anywhere else in the whole state of Kansas. So what did that say about what High Crest was? About 700 homes, about 350 of them are in horrible shape that, some residents were able to take care of their homes very well, others not at all. No running water. The sewers weren't working. They were plugged up or collapsed. Mold and the roofs leaking, rats. And so we found one of the first families we found, there was a young girl, 15 years old, developmentally disabled, who was basically caring for her schizophrenic mom, her two brothers who were still in diapers, and her grandmother, who was physically ill. in a home that had no heat in the winter except for a Coleman stove with propane bottles and no running water, and 17 cats inside the house that hadn't been let out. So you can imagine how bad this was. And she had not been in school. She's 15 years old, had not been in any kind of formal education for 5 years. And so because we were embedded in the neighborhood at this point, we began to develop a relationship. I'll never forget the cold winter night in December when a police officer, a sergeant from a police department called me and said, we got to get these family out of here. We know. And they said, can you take them tonight? And I said, yeah, we'll take them tonight. They had to condemn the house. We were able to go from that situation in that neighborhood, get them out of that situation, get the girl 15 years old in school, get the little kids treated, mom, schizophrenic, mental health services. 9 months they stayed at Topeka Rescue Mission and were able to leave in a healthy manner. Even grandma was able to get her physical help. She was on oxygen when we first went into the house, and she was able to get out and move forward with mentors. And so these things take time, but that's the kind of things we began to realize in Highcrest. So we were able to partner with Topeka Public Schools, the Community Resources Council, to be able to use the Avondale East Elementary School, which was shut down, which is now called the NET Center, Highcrest NET Center for Neighborhood Empowerment and Transformation. It's kind of a simple concept. We went around to the neighbors and we began to say, who are the leaders over here? And they said, what do you mean leaders? We said, well, who's the leaders of somebody who is good at hospitality? Somebody that's good at organization. How about somebody that's good at kind of watching out the window to see what's going on and calling the police? That's security. We found what we call indigenous leaders, and we invited them to be on the team. And so they said, when we said, would you like to be on the team? They said, what team? We said the team we're formulating called the Transformation Team, the Neighborhood Empowerment and Transformation Team. And they said, we've never been asked to be on anybody's team before, so except the gangs or whatever. And so we started a Dare to Dream program. Hey, how about let's dream? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? And so this is 3 years now later, this last July. And what we have seen is numerous individuals within the neighborhood wanting to be on the team, joining the Dare to Dream team, getting a mentor, working together to try to improve the neighborhood. And people say, well, is it working? Well, there's interest for sure. There's different classes of education. There's different programs that people get involved with. Some have got jobs. We have a Highcrest Housing Coalition now that's with the city and other nonprofits working together to try to address those 350 homes, to go in and see what you can do to fix the roofs, get rid of the rats, all that kind of stuff. But the way I like to phrase it is when we started out, we had a case, and like we saw what we talked about with a young girl and her family. That hasn't gone away, but some other things have gone away. For the first time in 6 years now, the Topeka Rescue Mission's population has declined from what it's been in the last 6 years. We're still crowded, but not crowded like we were. So we're thinking maybe what we've seen is some stabilization of one of our neighborhoods. The other thing that's happened, if we run the clock back about 15 months ago in Highcrest, there was a summer of violence. And there was a little girl, 5 years old, Lila Coates Nichols, who was killed in a drive-by shooting. There was a vigil on her behalf, and the neighbors were really scared, and they said, no, we want to keep moving forward. We don't want Lily's death to go in vain. About 3 weeks later, there was a rash of shootings on a weekend. About 13 of them, there was another individual killed. All that said, it was really, really difficult. Thanks to Topeka Police Department, thanks to the neighbors, thanks to the NET operation, in the last 15 months, there's only been one shooting and no homicides. And crime has dropped approximately 40% in that neighborhood. People are beginning to believe that, yeah, there can be transformation over here. There can be some hope. Didn't get this way overnight, but we won't change it overnight. But what we believe is instead of building a shelter, maybe what we can do is continue doing that, continue feeding thousands of meals, literally hundreds of thousands of meals, sheltering thousands of people. But maybe what we can do is strengthen our neighborhoods. Just a few more thoughts. This then helps us to see a picture of maybe more of the why. One of the things that I was extremely shocked about was the fact that quite a number of our citizens have been involved in various challenges of abuse, especially our women, who we see, especially some of the women in the neighborhoods in this area called human trafficking. And I really didn't want to believe it happened here in Topeka, but I began to open my eyes, began to really understand what it is. And so 2 years ago, we started a division of Topeka Rescue Mission called Restore Hope. The name we chose was because we want women who have been involved in sex trafficking, who have been basically held captive against their will for whatever means that the traffickers can come up with. We want to help them to know that there is hope. And we want to help them to understand that God had a plan for their lives and it wasn't this. And that we can help see that hope restored back to them. First year we officially launched out into this, we worked with 45 victims. I couldn't believe it. This year we're about 90 already in Topeka, Kansas.
Oh my goodness.
I know. It's unreal. What has happened is there's been an unfolding of collaborations. Now there's a Topeka-Shawnee County Human Trafficking Coalition that's been birthed, working with the YWCA and working with a number of others, Department of Children and Families, law enforcement. We almost every day work with the FBI and Department of Justice and working with federal marshals, our local law enforcement agencies here, which is everybody's in this. They really want to win this war. But we got a long way to go. And those are the kind of things that begin to unfold. So when we say homelessness and hunger, why? Why are we seeing this? We're working with Stormont Vale, St. Francis Hospital. Our team is training them on how to spot people when they come in the ER to maybe see if it's trafficking. And then one more thing that we have found is we're on the response end of things in regards to rescuing the homeless, trying to rescue neighborhoods, trying to help intervene and help people stabilize. But we'll continue to do that without really winning this battle unless we work at the youngest level of age possible. So in Highcrest, we started a program that is called Doxazo, D-O-X-A-Z-O. It took me a long time to pronounce it. It's a Greek word for glorify. But it's youth who are healthy youth. And when I say healthy, they come from homes of stability. They're not struggling with food, not struggling with shelter, got good education. And we begin working with the high school and college-age kids to bring them into places like Highcrest, Central Topeka, as well as down in the Rescue Mission, and train them on how to work with other kids who maybe come out of gangs or in gangs and who have been involved in things that most of us don't even want to think about. It was a big risk to do that. We started that 3 years ago as well, and it's phenomenal. Now we have Doxazo, what we call mission trips in the winter and in the summer. We have now what's called the Doxazo Missions Institute, which this last summer was about 30 kids working full-time to learn how to do urban ministry. And now we have what's called the long-term program, which is a 9-month program with about 15 students in it that are really learning so what is my life about? What can I do? They're college-age, high school, of what I can do to kind of do this rescue mission type stuff, maybe here or maybe around the globe. And so youth working with youth, it's really worked well. In Highcrest, we've got about, and when we have camps, we'll have 250, 300 kids come. It's amazing. And these kids love it. I mean, these are kids that are kind of wandering aimlessly in the Highcrest area, and they so much look forward to those camps in the summer. We have some former kids who have come from some former gang leaders' homes, now are part of the Doxazo leadership. And so police department is saying, keep going, keep doing what you're doing. This is working. Okay. We're seeing transformation occur. And then the last thing is that we decided to build a children's center for preschoolers. And people say, man, how are they going to know what's going on? But when parents come in with their small children, they're struggling. And having the ability to work or go to training or go to look for a job is almost not possible because of the small kids. So we thought, well, let's create something so those kids will have a safe place to be. Then we began to realize that in poverty neighborhoods and in poverty in general, there's kind of a theme here in regards to cognitive functioning disability with a lot of people in poverty, and it kind of goes generation to generation to generation. We say, well, what's going on there? Is that the lead paint or is that the water or what is it? And they began to realize the stress factors of poverty challenge the function of a small child's good, healthy brain development. And in that, their frontal lobe of their brain does not form normally. And the cognitive functioning capacities, in other words, when they go into school age or when they're maybe a young adult and they're going to class trying to learn how to do a job, they don't retain the information because the brain will not absorb that information. They cannot process it. I began over the years to kind of, what's going on? We're putting training in, it's time and effort into people, and they're just not retaining it. And we begin to find it starts way, way back when they're in the crib, or especially the first 3 to 5 years. So we have created what's called the Children's Palace. And we built it, and we just put playgrounds in about a week and a half ago. 400 volunteers helped us build the playgrounds. This will be a place for 124 homeless kids to be able to come cradle to pre-kindergarten, to be able to get an opportunity for, while they're with us, a opportunity to start healthy in their lives. Now, will we know if this works for about the next 20 years? Nope. I probably won't be around to see it, but somebody else will. But we believe we're investing in the future by helping these parents have a stable place for their kids to go, which will be a total relief for them, helping them to move forward in life, but also help those children to have a better opportunity for a development at this early age of their life to be able to be successful 20 years from now.
You've been listening to Real Estate 101. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Southwest Topeka has a good neighbor. State Farm agent Jim Garrison, now at 29th and Urish. If your current insurance situation has you going around in circles, get off the roundabout and stop in and meet Jim and his wonderfully efficient staff. Let Jim Garrison give you a quote and make the Garrison comparison. He's confident that with State Farm's competitive rates, the right coverage, and his unmatched service, you'll want to make him your new insurance agent. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and Jim Garrison is there for you, northeast of the roundabout at 29th and Urish.
Thanks for joining us again. You're listening to Real Estate 101. I'm Karey Brown, broker, owner of Realty Executives, and I am here with Barry Feaker from Topeka Rescue Mission. So there's so many wonderful things going on. How can the community help, and how can they find out about all the ways that they can help?
Yeah, great question. Well, there's numerous ways we try to get the word out there. We have a website. It's www.trmonline.org. So they can go there, and we're in one of those website transformations itself. And so we're kind of getting there to the old site's still up, but the new site's going to be clean, sharper. But they can volunteer. So there's a volunteer button, and they can go there, and they can sign up to volunteer. They might volunteer to serve a meal. They might volunteer to pack a food basket. They might volunteer to be a mentor, might volunteer to go out and do street reach, might volunteer in the area of human trafficking, and the list goes on and on and on. There are 1,500 volunteers right now that help us every month. That's amazing. We love volunteers. There's a donate button. Again, everything that we do is based upon giving. Nobody has to do this. So they're not required. We don't go out and take it out of their paycheck like the government does. So if people don't want to give, they don't give. If they do, then we have many opportunities. So one opportunity is financial, of course. It takes roughly around $3 to $4 million a year in cash donations. That's a lot of money to be able to do all this. But we got a lot of big utility bills, believe me.
And you have no government funding.
None at all. No. That's the generosity of this community. Another way, and this is awesome. Last year, just under 600,000 meals. That's a lot of food. If we took the food cost down to just a minimum of $3 a meal, which is pretty hard to find food for $3, but we can do it. We took it down to there. If we would have paid $3 a meal for all the meals we served last year, it would have been $1.6 million to buy the food.
Wow.
Instead, we only spent $60,000 on food. Last year, because another way people give is just give us food. And so we take that food and we make menus out of it. And so the community, by giving food, saved us $1.5 million in cash that we didn't have to raise, isn't it? I had a friend of mine who is the board president of the Central Florida Coalition on Homeless, and they have big budget, government funded. And he came here to have a tour. I took him through our warehouse, and he says, "Wow, where do you buy all your food?" I said, "We don't." And he says, "What do you mean you don't?" I said, "It's donated." "How's that work?" I go, "I have no clue." God and people, generosity, And so people can give clothes. We have clothing bank. We have thrift store. We're looking at getting a second location for a thrift store because people have been so generous, and thrift stores provide jobs. They provide an income source for us to sell donated goods to us. So we do generate some income that way, but generally it kind of pays for utilities and the building costs. People can donate, again, time, resources financially, as well as their material possessions that they don't need anymore. And so we do have Facebook, Topeka Rescue Mission Facebook. We have a monthly newsletter that comes out. And then we have some on our team, like myself and others, that go out to churches and civic groups and businesses to say, we're just here to tell you the story and invite you to be a part of the story.
That is just phenomenal. It makes you proud to be here to think that so many wonderful people are donating their time and resources.
It really
amazing.
does.
So do you guys, like you said, you try to help reform them and not just, provide them a place to go. So do you start with getting them to a job and then, educating them on budgets and things like that to keep them out of the homeless shelter? Or?
Again, it's there are so many different reasons someone's homeless. If somebody has been human trafficked, let's say for the last 20 years, there's a lot of brokenness there. A lot
of damage there.
Yeah, a lot of damage. So our objective with them is just really try to help stabilize them. We don't say, hey, go get a job, and everything's going to be okay. We try to get them in a safe place. Some of our circumstances require us to get them out of Topeka for their safety. And so we have collaborations with some other states now that we actually transport people sometimes in the middle of the night, get them out of here. They say, I can't be here anymore. We find a place for them to go, pack up them and their kids, boom, out of here. And nobody knows where they are except them and us. And us is about 4 people. And so, and the FBI and everybody else, so they can find them. That's one. Another situation that we find all too often is mental illness. And so we work with some mental health experts, the Vallejo, private counselors, addiction programs, the Vallejo Recovery, to help people address that issue before they're actually able to go to work. And then once the people are stabilized that way or any other way, one of our programs called CARE, Career Readiness and Education, has an opportunity for the next 13 weeks then to be able to plug somebody in on a full-time basis to be able to learn the basics of work. They will have an opportunity to go out and work as an intern during that 13 weeks at a business site with some of our businesses. The one I just got to plug is Capitol Plaza Hotel. These guys are awesome. They have hired a number of our CARE graduates, but not only that, every time we have a CARE graduation after the 13 weeks, they throw a banquet on for them, free, to the rescue mission, to them. We go out there, we celebrate, people talk about what they learned in the 13 weeks, and then oftentimes Capitol Plaza will put job apps on everybody's table saying, hey, you want to apply here? And they've hired a number of people. So, but you got to kind of get them patched up, fixed up, help them stabilize. Not everybody comes in employment ready. About 50% of our adult population is disabled in some way or another. If you go to the rescue mission, you'll see people in wheelchairs, on crutches, walkers, limping. First guy I ever met at the rescue mission, my first day almost 31 years ago, his pants fell down. And he was staggering down the street with his pants down, and somebody called me and said, there's a drunk coming down the street. You need to do something about it. I went out, and he was just an old guy. And he said, I'm sorry, skin and bones. He said, I can't bend over. Years ago, I was in a construction accident, and my back's broken, and my pants fell down today. Do you have a belt? Oh. And I said, my first day on the job, April 1st, 1986, or 21st, 1986, and I said, I don't know if we have a belt or not, but I found him a belt. And then he said, would you mind putting it on me? And would you mind pulling my pants up? And I thought, that's going to be interesting. And I said, well, I guess that's why I'm here. So I did, and he just shook my hand. He said, God bless you, and I never saw him again. I asked him if he needed shelter. He's fine. Food, he didn't need food. He said he was fine, although he looked like he needed food. And I said, are you thirsty? And he said, oh, yeah. And he drank about 5 glasses of water, and he just shook my hand and said, thank you, God bless you. And so that's kind of what we do. We meet people right where they are, do the best that we can with what we have, and sometimes we never see them again, and sometimes they're with us for a very long time.
Wow. So inside of the rescue mission, do they have roles where they help, or how did...
Yeah. So some of our programs are work training programs, servants in training being one of those, CBLD, the Center for Biblical Leadership Development. So they'll have a full-time job. They may be in the kitchen, maybe out on our trucks. They may be working front desk. We have what we call safety team that just goes all over the place. And these are guys who are trained to watch and have two-way radios and call in any problems. The list goes on. Our distribution centers, we have 2 of those, warehouses. They work in those. And then we have, for all other people, we have what we call volunteer rewards credits. And so if you volunteer around the rescue mission, you're not in one of those programs, but you volunteer, then you get credit for that. Those credits then translate into things like rent assistance, utility assistance. We have thrift store, so you can get certificates to go to the thrift store. And if we didn't have something in the clothing bank and you found it later, then you can go and trade that in, that certificate, for shoes, clothes, appliances, whatever. We have an opportunity for people when they leave the mission, if they've successfully completed the program, whatever that program is, based upon their ability and the goals that they have with our staff, is that they will have a completion of program set of things that they are able to get to set up in their new home. A bed, sheets, window curtains, sometimes even a car, if we have one donated to us. So they have an opportunity to participate and to be able to benefit. So, yeah, when people come in, we have staff, paid staff, volunteers, as well as guests of the mission, all working together. Nobody knows who's who.
Wow. You guys are just phenomenal.
It's a phenomenal community. It really is.
So, unfortunately, we are already out of time, so we're definitely going to have you back, because this just sounds like something that everyone needs to know about. I know you guys have been around for a very long time, and I know that there are misconceptions about what you do. Sure. But it sounds like, you're helping to fix the broken. We're attempting to give them back their self-esteem, and it's just phenomenal. So, again, Barry Feaker with the Topeka Rescue Mission. So thanks for being on the show. Definitely going to have you back. I think that everybody needs to know everything about you guys and how you work. Karey Brown, broker owner of Realty Executives Preferred Advisors, and you've been listening to Real Estate 101.
Thank you for listening to Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Realty Executives Preferred Advisors. Tune in again next Sunday at 11 o'clock for Real Estate 101.